Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Garris, and welcome to the Transporter Room. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, Chuck A., the tngfanatic. Chuck is one of the associate producers for the Seventh Row podcast. So, let me beam him in.
Hey, Chris.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. We just got done doing that recording a little while ago with another channel, and now we're doing ours for my channel. And so I want to thank you for, taking the time to come on here today and just talk with me about, your a little bit of everything, your history, your background, how long you've been doing Star Trek, and just Trek in general, and even non-Trek stuff, because I feel like you probably do a little more than just that. But I was just kind of curious. One thing I was wondering about was, how did you find out about? Because how I met you is through really the Seventh Rule initially, and then and then I come to find out you're everywhere that I'm at on all the channels. So how did you, like, in all the podcasting, like the channels, how did you get started, like with Seventh Rule and so on?
Well, I was following Aaron Eisenberg on Twitter, and I met Aaron a couple times, once in a department store in California and once at one of the conventions in Denver. And I started following him on Twitter, and then, of course, I was sad to see, that he had passed away. And I did some more research, and I found out about the seventh rule. So I didn't catch the seventh rule right away. Probably, I'm going to guess in 2020, and I believe they started in 2019. And yeah, I was on a lot of other chats on other YouTube before that. So the seventh rule came up after that. I went to the convention in Vegas. I believe it was 1 year it was canceled because of COVID. It was the very next year. I think it was 2021. And I got to meet, Ryan T. Husk and Melissa and Sirach. And I really got involved, with a lot of the chat members there because I was really new to their chat. So since then, it's been, you know, getting to know a lot more people from the seventh rule. More and more went to the convention, had a vendors table in 2023. I got to meet at least 20, I'd say, of the chat pack there, and got to be familiar with Ryan and Sirach and Melissa and more of them. A lot better after that show. So I've been involved quite a bit. So I guess it's pushing on the fourth year, I believe.
Well, there's a lot of channels out there, and then I've seen you in tex-trek and Larry Nemechek. I'm trying to think where else have I seen you at, and you pop up, and I'm like, oh, there's Chuck. There's Chuck over there.
Yeah, Trek culture quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and the sci-fanatics, the gentleman from Australia.
Oh.
So I'm in a lot of the chats.
Mm-hmm.
Nick from Australia.
Okay. I don't that one doesn't ring a bell to me right now, but there's so many of them out there. There's no way of keeping up with them
Right.
all. I do like Trek culture. I do watch that as much as I can because they have some really great interviews out there. Um, and and then Connor and Dom do their thing as well. Ryan and
Right.
Tarak do all of theirs. I've been watching the Sci-Fi Sisters even more now.
Right.
That's a fun one to get into. And so there's so many out there, but I know you mentioned the conventions, and we've talked, on our own about that. How many conventions have you now gone in your lifetime?
Well, I started watching the original series when I was like 10 or 11 years old. It was the third season. I started getting involved with Star Trek. My first episode that remember was A Savage Curtain. They had Abe Lincoln and Sirach and all it was a rock monster. So my dad started taking me to conventions in the probably the early to mid 70s, and I went to a few there, and then occasional, maybe one a year, two a year, and I really started going to conventions when TNG started. So like 87, 88, 89, and into the 90s. Uh, to answer your question, I'm sure it's been at least 50 conventions or maybe more over the year. That's from it's the early 80s where I started to go, or mid 80s when I started to go a little more, and then I in 1998 I became a vendor at for Creation Entertainment there at Pasadena Grand Slam, and then they moved it to Las Vegas. So at least once a year at Vegas, and I missed only two or three, so maybe three or four of the shows, but I've been to almost every one there, and I got to meet a lot of actors over the years. Unfortunately, a lot of the original series, guest actors have passed, but I would say I've met like 50 or 60 actors over the years. You get to chit chat with them and got some autographs and such like that. Yeah.
So when you're a vendor, I mean, you're sometimes when you're a vendor, you're actually sometimes sitting in there and right. You can be, from what I've seen, sitting right next to one of the actors giving autographs. Can't you?
Yeah. My wife and I were at a show. I think it was the 50th anniversary. It was either 2015 or 2016, and Robert Duncan McNeil came to my table and he bought a Tom Paris doll and a plate. Got to talk a lot with them. A lot of the actors stroll by my table and start up conversations. Walter Koenig used to come to my table almost every year and look at the Chekhov plate and other plates and say hello. And we used to talk a little bit here and there. But, I met a lot of the actors before I became a vendor, just, being a patron. And then, walking down the hall when it was slow, I'd run in and talk to quite a few actors there, and they, like I said, they came to my table and said hello occasionally. So over the years it was, and like you mentioned that the vendor, sometimes I was right next to the signing table of other actors. Yes, I talked to Bobby Clark was next to my table. He was the Gorn. Got to talk to him quite a bit. So it depends on where I was placed in the dealer's room. So.
Oh man, that's cool. Makes me want to go get my own table and sell stuff just so I can be there and potentially have to run into them and be like, "You have to talk to me. You're right next to me. You can't get rid of me." And so, what?
Yeah, the
Go ahead.
the last show I did as a vendor, 2023 in Vegas, uh, we were leaving for the day, and I said hello to Anthony Montgomery, and he says, "I know you. I've seen you at these shows. I've talked to you before." I said, "Yeah, we've talked quite a few times." So he actually remembered me, which was cool because they talked to so many people.
Oh yeah, they do. And I remember going to when I went to SpaceCon last year, I went to because I am a Delta Flyer, member of the Delta Flyers, we have monthly Zooms with Garrett and Robbie. And Garrett, that man has a memory. I mean, he could remember everybody. And when I went there and said hello, he's like, "Hey, Chris," he kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I've talked to Garrett Wong quite a few times at the show, and I think he might have remembered me too because the last time I saw him, he was standing in front of his table. He says, "Oh, hi," and shook my hand. And but I talked to him quite a few times. Yeah,
Hmm.
so sometimes they remember you.
True. So now, what do you when you're at this conventions as a vendor? What I know you've got an eBay store and all that. So are you selling the same items, or what are you selling at the conventions themselves?
Well, the conventions, I basically put the eBay store on vacation and pretty much take everything that I could fit in my SUV. Um, and try to take a selection of of merchandise that the actors might sign, like figures and plates and stuff like that. Uh, a lot of the a lot of the customers are looking for things to have signed other than just a photo. So it's good, if they can sign an action figure or a doll or a plate. Like a lot of the TNG actors, uh, you know, there's a uh, 10 plates in the series of TNG. So, usually take the ones that whoever the actors are going to be there. So, and then just, people filling out their collections, and there's a lot of spur of the moment purchases. Oh, I love that. I haven't seen that before. And, to that. It's good. It's good to bring a variety of things so you're not locked into just a few items.
Well, you shared with me a picture of that. I guess you said it's a rare plate of with Spock.
Yeah, Spock from Unification, and the it was the last plate in that series of five, and they didn't seem to make as many as the other four in the series. It makes it very rare, and that was a very popular TNG episode because the other four plates are from the original series or movies. So it was a plate that was very very hard to come by. There's a few plates in the series that they seem to not make as many, and there's people that are, like I said, trying to fill out their collection. Say, oh, I haven't seen that one before, or I've never seen that one before. I didn't know they made that at all. So there's a lot of the merchandise like that. Yeah.
I keep on looking over your shoulder, and I just can't stop looking at that picture of Martok behind you. I'm like, that's a good.
Yeah, I actually that's there I have two pictures. That one I got on the internet, and I actually met J.G. Hertzler at a Galacticon in Denver a couple years ago, and I was waiting for at his. We got there early, and I was waiting at his signing table, and he wasn't there. So I told my friend, "Well, let's just go walk around." And as we were walking around, JG came up, uh, walking towards his table, and I told him that I know Ryan and Sirach from the Seventh Rule because he's on that quite a bit, and he chit chatted and talked for 5 minutes before he went over to his table. Then he signed not that one, but I have another one. He signed another photo for me, and it really nice gentleman. One of my favorite characters on Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
So, with your screen name being TNG Fanatic, I'm thinking it's safe to say TNG is probably probably your favorite series, or
Well, when I went on to eBay, I think my first year was 1998. TNG had finished a couple years, and DS9 and Voyager had just started. So yes, that would have been my favorite series at the time because TNG got better and better as the seasons went along. And then I watched DS9 and Voyager in first run as they aired, and then I've seen TNG episodes so many times, and then I started really watching uh, the reruns of DS9 and Voyager, and I loved those shows too, and Enterprise when that came on. Um, but yeah, probably TNG was my favorite, probably still my favorite. But I love DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise. I'm trying to watch it more. I haven't seen it as much as the other series, but anytime I have an opportunity to watch an episode, I'm enjoying it more and more. You're getting more familiar with the characters and in the I can't think of the word I want to use, but the they were kind of serialized towards the end. I like that, just like what DS9 did. Yeah, I'd love to if you're watching the episodes and they make referrals back to previous episodes or actually be serialized. I like that, but from what I've always heard, that they don't like to do that because somebody who comes in and watches an episode or the series for the first time, they won't know the what happened in the previous season or previous couple seasons. But I did like the serialization of DS9 and uh, seri- uh, uh, season 3 and 4 of Enterprise when they did some serialization.
Well, I know, and that's well, the whole Zindy arc. I mean, that was Zindy was the whole season. Season three was all that, and then four was basically cleaning up after that and wrapping up the show, because that's what they were doing, unfortunately. And I think for me still, so I started on TNG. That's the first one that was on air when I was growing up, and again, it's a great series. I still Picard, Patrick Stewart's still probably one of the, I don't want to say the best captains. I don't want to put it out there like that, but one of the more level-headed captains. The more diplomatic. Until I would say we got Janeway, because she was also very diplomatic and did follow the line of the of Starfleet and the Federation. Um, and of course, then Cisco had to do what he had no choice. He had the Dominion War, and he had to do what he had to do. And so, I guess what would be to do you have of all the characters? Do you have a favorite character?
Well, we could take one show at a time. So my favorite character in the original series was Spock. Uh, Loved uh, William Shatner too as Kirk, and Next Generation. It's always been either Picard or Data. I've met Brent Spiner a few times. And has such a great sense of humor, and he tried to get that into Data as much as possible. DS9, it would have to be Nog, Aaron Eisenberg's character, or Sirach, Jake Sisko's character. Uh, Jake Sisko Sirach's character. Um, got that backwards. Voyager, it's got us a real toss up. I like all the characters, probably either Captain Janeway or the Doctor. And an Enterprise has got to. I like all the characters that I've seen, but I guess it's going to have to be uh, Captain Archer. And then going into the new series, that's a whole other thing. Uh, haven't seen the episodes as much, so as I watch it more on stream, I'll probably pick out some favorites.
Well, and they're still new, and they're all and people have unfortunately, people do have issues with the new series out there. They're like, they always say it's not Star Trek, or it's just yeah, that's definitely a discussion for another time, because we could go way down a rabbit hole on that one. And that was when you say memorable, like, I don't, for me, when I think about like a memorable episode, when it comes to Enterprise, which now I may have to change my memorable episode after talking with John Billingsley last week, because because it was Dear Doctor was one of my more favorite episodes for Enterprise. And after he explained his thought processes about it, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can continue to like. I mean, I can, but still, I was like, it made me think about that episode. Um, and of course, best of both worlds. Those are up there for me as well. But what is do you have let's just say with TNG at first, what are some of the more memorable episodes that really impacted you the most?
Best of both worlds. Yesterday's Enterprise. Um, Towards the sixth and seventh season, it would be there was an episode called Timescape, which is very memorable for me, and uh, the ship in the bottle with Moriarty. Earlier episodes, probably going to be Redemption, The Wharf 1 and 2. There's, the episodes just got better and better as the seasons progressed. There was, some episodes that were on the mediocre side, but they kept that quality of episodes just keep on going right through season 7. And of course, All Good Things, the last episode, two-parter.
Yeah, those were good. And then I know, I mean, I can't even fathom trying to pick one for DS9. There's so many that were just really good, memorable episodes in DS9.
Well, Far Beyond the Stars, uh, the uh, the episode I went blank on the title, but the one where Cisco has to frame the Romulans to get them into
In the Pale Moonlight.
in the pale moonlight. I like the episodes with Vic Fontaine,
Oh, those were so good.
his way, bada bing, bada bang. Uh, the episode, the last episode where we left behind. Uh, and the serialization of the seventh season where we had Damar and Kira as a uh, entering being in Starfleet and going back to Cardassia. The last few episodes were also very, very good. And Odo's backstory towards the end with the founders, those were really good. The whole seventh season was so good.
Yes. I I still wish they would let us know what exactly happened to Cisco after the series, which I'm actually reading his autobiography that was written by Derek, is it Attico? I think that's how you say his name. And I haven't. I mean, I'm still reading it. I'm very early on to the book, and it's actually been really good. Um,
Yeah, I've heard good things. I haven't picked it up yet. I've been reading slowly the Now Visitor's book,
Same.
a little at a time.
Yeah.
But after that one, I'll definitely get the Cisco one. Been thinking of picking it up, and I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I have the Nas book. I just ordered. I actually just got it in about 2 weeks ago, because I had been hearing so much. I've heard so many good things about it, and um, oh my god, I lost my train of thought for a second there. But yeah, anyway, so I heard so many things about it. I've talked to other people that I've interviewed. You know, they have referenced that book for other causes and everything else. So yeah, I was like, okay, I gotta read this book. And it's so far, it's pretty eye opening. The stuff that that went on during back, even today, honestly, but what really went on back in the 90s and the 70s and the 60s of everything that happened. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's very eye opening. Is right. I mean, I've heard a couple of the stories here and there, but a lot of it's new. I've never heard before behind the scenes stories and things about the actors and their characters that I didn't know.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to ask this question, and I know it's probably the hardest question, one of the hardest ones. The next one after what's your favorite series episode? What's your favorite Star Trek movie?
Well, I've answered this before. It's a toss up between Wrath of Khan, The Voyage Home, and The Undiscovered Country. Um, I like them all for different aspects. The uh, the Wrath of Khan was really good for the Khan Kirk story. The Voyage Home brought back so much comedy to the show, and it had a good story arc for getting Spock and Kirk into the back in the past, and then the Undiscovered Country because it was a lot with the Klingons and there's the ending to uh, the original series movies. So I like all three of them. I don't dislike any of the other ones, but those are the three strongest ones.
And those are my three. Yeah, they're the three ones they're my three strongest ones as well. Um, and it was I had to go back and I never had watched TOS. I just never had. Um, and especially before the remastered versions, it was for me, unfortunately, it was just really hard to watch. Now it's a whole lot better for my, just because I'm in the Star Wars, the better special effects is what I've been raised on. Um, but I learned to get through, get past that and watch the series for the content and not the special effects. And it's a really good series. But I finally was like, okay, I wanted to learn about the con piece of this and where he came from. And I just went back and finally watched Space Seed. And I was like, man, that's a really, really good episode of TOS. And it filled in some of the holes that I had from watching, the Wrath of Khan. Now, as we all know, Chekhov was not in season 1 of TOS. So there's always been that little nugget of contention of like, well, how did Khan know who he was?
Yeah, Walter Koenig likes to make jokes about that. I've heard a few different of his stories, but one time he said, well, he wasn't in season one, but he was on the ship, in training or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's mentioned quite a few possibilities how Khan could have known Chekhov.
Oh yeah,
You know,
it's easy to fill that in. I mean, it's
right?
just so easy to do that. Um, so what of all the species in the Star Trek world that we have met and seen, which one have you found the most intriguing?
Um, kind of repeat that, will you, Chris?
Oh,
Because you faded for just a
I
second.
said which alien species that have been
Oh,
through in our Trek industry Trek have you found to be the most intriguing out of all of them?
well, it's a toss up between the Borg
Oh.
and the Romulans. The Klingons, they kind of, since they were an ally on and off with the Federation, but the Borg, uh, the episode Q, Who, and Best of Both Worlds, and a lot of the episodes on Voyager were very, very good. And the Romulans were always underhanded and trying to get the Federation uh, to be uh, that's what's the word I want to use. They were just so underhanded and sneaky. That's the word that they were trying to get the Federation to uh, to side with to side with them. They're always saying, "Well, hey, we're not really that underhanded and sneaky," and they would play the field like we want to be your friends, but they really weren't.
All the time. And even and well, it started in TOS, but then I mean they even went as far. So from what I've heard and understood was that if Enterprise had gotten a fifth season, they were going to explore the whole Romulan aspect of it, the Romulan War and all of that, which is why they brought them in there at the end of the series with that little that little small arc they had with them trying to once again cause disarray in the sector, in the quadrant, because they do not want Earth. We didn't even have Federation, but they don't want people working together. So it would always behoove them to try and keep everybody segregated or separated. And because again, if they knew if you have an alliance, then they may be, outgunned and outmanned at some point in time.
Well, it's like a unification in TNG where they were pretending to be they're wanting unification and they wound up being they were going to attack Earth,
Mm-hmm.
but they were pretending that they were uh, on Spock's side, but they really weren't. So
Exactly.
that's they did that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
They did. They did that all the time. Um, those dang Romulans. So I don't know how much, and I don't know how much you're into, how much you are, involved in, like space flight and all that stuff. But I mean, Star Trek has obviously depicted space exploration, and in my opinion, I feel like it has helped to shape the way space exploration is today in real life. But what do you feel? How do you think it has progressed us?
Well, I think it was really prevalent in the after Star Trek was finished, and when it went into reruns, it seemed to push the space program a little further along. And then, of course, you had that lull where after they landed on the moon, and there people were talking, well, let's go to Mars, and they that has never happened, of course. But I know Nichelle Nichols was really a good spokesperson for NASA.
Yes.
So they were trying to put the two together, but yeah, NASA uh, they've done a lot of exploration, but they haven't done the manned exploration other than the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about, well, let's start a colony on Mars. I don't know. Hopefully that happens down the line.
I want that to happen. I would love to see it in my lifetime. I'm just, I don't know. I really hope it is. Uh, um, so there was something that was just in the news recently about um, Star Trek, and I don't. And we actually had it was a discussion. I want to say it was on. I think it was Star Trek and Chill. A couple of either the last week or the week before, or Main Viewer, when there was an article that claimed or had said that Alex Kurtzman and his team were saying that Star Trek was dying, and I don't think it's dying.
I think that discussion came about after the Section 31 movie because it really wasn't so much Star Trek. There wasn't enough Star Trek in it. And, the comments from a lot of people who have seen it were disappointed. I don't think Star Trek is dying. I think there's another lull coming up here. I have to see what Star Trek Academy, how they do, and Strange New Worlds. How their next season is. Um, I think a lot of people were disappointed that Paramount Plus they uh, didn't renew Prodigy and they had to go to Netflix, and we're still waiting to see if that's going to be a third season. And the Lower Decks, for people who really love that show, uh, I really would have loved to seen it go a couple more seasons because it was just hitting its stride. So I don't think Star Trek's dying. I think there's some disappointment on where it's going at the moment, but I think a lot to do with how Star Trek Academy does, and a lot of people they wanted Star Trek Legacy after the Picard season 3, and yeah, and there's a lot of people disappointed that that hasn't happened. I hope it still happens, but the longer you wait, you have to explain why there's a 3 year or 4 year gap in between the Picard season 3 and the Legacy show. It would have been nice if that had happened, right away. Um, I think they have other ideas of where they wanted to go with Star Trek, and that was not on their table.
I agree with everything you just said, and I hope we're not. It just doesn't seem like it. Well, it's almost been 10 years, because Discovery came out in 2017. So I mean, we could be hitting, like you're saying, franchise fatigue again, which I hope that's not the case. And Starfleet Academy, I hope it brings us, it resurfaces and brings more people back to it. And I mean, me personally, I have enjoyed every season of Strange New Worlds. It is a great series.
Yeah, I just watched the crossover episode with Lower Decks today, and I hadn't seen it I seen it like 3 or 4 times after it came out, and I hadn't seen it since then. And I got to see that again. That was such good Star Trek, and Strange New Worlds uh, has been uh, consistently quality. It's probably not an episode I disliked. It's all uh, good quality episodes, and hopefully the next season, which we should get here in a couple months, I hope, will continue that.
Agreed. I hope so too. And I if I'd had a, I'm gonna out myself here. If I'd had a VHS tape of that crossover episode, it'd have probably been worn out because I watched that episode so many times because it was so good, so
Yeah,
good.
I think I watched it like 8 or 10 times after it came out, and then, like I said, I had might have watched it once after that, but I got an inkling today. I said I want to watch that again, so I watched it
I
today.
may have to watch it this weekend myself because it's just, I mean, they hit on so many series because they came from the 24th century back to 23rd. They talked about enterprise. And that's the one thing I have loved about even Discovery was doing it and Strange New Worlds has done it. They, they have given Enterprise a lot of respect and love in those two series because after it went off, as the actors of some of them have said, they feel like they were the ones that killed the franchise. It wasn't them. It was just franchise fatigue. But it really is so awesome to see how much the writers have given, you know, homage to Enterprise. I mean, again, the crossover episode when Ahura and Ortegas are in, I think it was in engineering, and they're talking about, she's like, that's Travis Mayweather. And, oh, and she's like, oh, and that was, oh man, Hoshi Sato, she was the best. And her, I just like, oh, it was so good. And so, I hope, yeah, I'm looking forward to this next season. Um, so I've got the last question I usually ask everybody, as you've probably seen, is what's what piece of Star Trek technology do you wish we had today?
Um, well, it's always between the transporter and the replicator. Um, you know, the replicator might be too easy. You can get what you want too quickly. And, transporter would be really handy if you have to be somewhere like immediately, if you have an illness in your family or you have to be at a convention. Uh, but I'm going to have to probably say the transporter. Uh, 'Cause like I said, the replicator, you might just go crazy with it and just get everything that you need and things you don't need. But the transporter would be very handy, I would think.
That's always been my preferred piece of technology for that exact reasons because I live in Texas. It's a big state. So if I need to go somewhere, sometimes it could be a 7 hour drive.
Yeah, I drove it one time. Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah. When I went to the convention last year in Dallas, in Dallas, I was like, that's a 7 hour drive one way. And then I had to do it to come home, you know. And I can't even, it just made me think about that, as with you being a vendor, all of the stuff you have to take with you. Oh, when to set up your booth and all your merchandise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite tiring. But as I'm getting older, it gets more tiring. And I had retired from that in uh, 2016, and then I went back to it like 3 or 4 years later when I retired from my job. So I have more time on my hands now. So I said, well, I'm going to go back and start selling again because I have, you know, a variety of merchandise that you can get all those Star Trek fans at Star Trek Las Vegas, and it's pretty much all Star Trek. So that's the place to sell it.
All right. Well, Chuck, I want to thank you for your time today and for, hanging in after our free for all and hopping on with me.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Chris.
You have a good evening. Talk to you later.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
All right. Bye bye.
Joining us. Maya is one of the associate producers for the Seventh Row podcast.
and I wanted more. And then I got an email saying, "Would you like to become a sponsor for the following season?" And I thought, I would. So I went ahead with that, and it just snowballed from there. That said, you're surrounded by a very creative environment. If that's what you're after, there's a wealth of creative endeavor. I think what Star Trek did, rather than preaching, rather than coming up with a message and saying we need to tell people about this, we need to go full on, science book thumping and get people involved. What it did was it said, look in this mirror. This is what we see of you today.
Thank you for watching The Transporter Room. For just $5 per month, enjoy ad-free access to this episode and all previous ones, plus exclusive bonus content. Sign up now on Patreon.